The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Well, welcome to Sarah's Country for the next week and maybe two, broadcasting to you from the comforts of my home to yours, where we invite guests from New Zealand's food and fibre sector to bring us inspiring innovation with open minds and the politics of getting on with it with open hearts. I'm your host, Sarah Perriam, and it's my honour and privilege to join you Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday from 7 p.m. live across the world to discuss the matters that matter most to those that thrive to achieve the best in the world. This is the gold standard of farming and growing in alliance with the tremendously hardworking team at Global HQ. Now, I want to talk tonight about the homely goodness that we're enjoying. We're between homes of Sarah's Country, from the birthplace of Blink Innovation on the Lincoln University campus, and heading soon to our very own custom-built studio and offices in Taitapu. You know, those working from home quirks and niggles, you know, the new distractions, you know, there's quite a different type of working environment, and I'm absolutely loving it. I mean, I know we were a bit late off the post. Joel just said to me, he just feels so relaxed working from home, and that's what it should be like. But of course, those niggles, those distractions, they're a different type, aren't they? You know, the type of visitors that stay for extended cups of tea because they don't realise that you're working still. The temptation to wash and fold your clothes, like Joel, I don't know if you've ever washed and folded your clothes at work, but it's not really something that you do at the office. And there's but there's two happy people, I should say people, in the interim move. There's Joel, he's stoked because back on the home cooked meals, and there's a certain little fluff ball that's getting way more attention than she's ever received. And I think that I will need to introduce tonight's co-host to you very shortly. Joel, you'll be chuffed as all pie.
Yeah, I mean, homemade meals are pretty good.
And it was my food bag, Nadia, and it was naked burgers.
Oh, yeah. And
Joel took one look at me and was like, oh, you don't expect me to eat that without bread, do you? It was like lettuce and the meatball. And so he wanted his burger clothed. So I said, well, I do have bread, but it's paleo almond turmeric cricket bread. So Joel has had another first tonight eating cricket flour.
I forgot about that, actually.
Yeah, I tell you what, it does taste the same as normal bread. And of course, we make some fine wheat here in this country as well. Now, of course, many farmers and growers live and work in their home environments, and it's second nature. Of course, I chose to branch out and, have a base to avoid these distractions at home, because I know that I'd spend half of my day in the garden if I worked at home all the time. On that note, the peonies got in this morning. Life hack, actually, from my food bag is with the ice pack. You cut that and put them apparently over top of the peonies, especially with this extremely warm spring. As I said to someone today, it's like we went from summer to spring. You know what it's like around the country, and let's hope for more moisture. And of course, I love to hear from you, our live audience, wherever you're watching, from your home to mine tonight in the comments. For those who are watching for the first time, how about we try hashtag first time commenter? I'd love to know what town and area that you're watching from. I'd love hearing and knowing whereabouts you're watching and listening around the country. And of course, this is on demand on podcast as well. And for our thumb-happy commentators that are with us every night, welcome. I absolutely love you. And I'd love to hear from you some gardening tips, because where I've moved into this new house, I basically got stuck in and made it a blank canvas. So, of course, I would love to know some fruit tree tips, flowers, hedging. So, I mean, I'm in Canterbury, so think about that. I'd love to know. If I had a growing section in Sarah's Country, I'd have to do that alongside my mum. I tell you what, that woman could tell you the full Latin name of a flower from its smell like a metre away. She's incredible. Now, here in Sarah's Country, we are passionate about growing food and fibre for our most curious consumers. So whatever walks of life you are watching and listening, I can guarantee you one thing: you will learn something from this show, because every single show I certainly do. So on that note, our fabulous lineup on Sarah's Country tonight. The longer-term marketing issues around the New Zealand strong wool sector have brought about talks of a merger between two major wool organisations. This is Primary Wool Co-Operative and Wools of New Zealand. But do we take this with a grain of salt, as this apparently is the 8th time talks have happened? After 720, Chair of PwC and long-term advocate for returning a premium to wool growers is no other than Hawke's Bay farmer Hamish de Lautour, and I look forward to asking him about his thoughts on Damien O'Connor's announcement this afternoon. If you missed it, we now have a Strong Wool Action Group. Same but different name. Working Group, then Report, then Action Group, then what? Mr. de Lautour is going to bring us his wisdom on how wool is to capitalise on its rightful place, we all know, as a sustainable fibre of choice for consumers into the future. We hope. Last week, we heard from Karina Jordan from Beef and Lamb New Zealand on what was in the new freshwater regulations. We then heard from Dean Carson, agribusiness consultants in Southland, on how frustrated farmers are about these rules. And then Caroline Reid from Overseer touched on how out of touch the Ministry for the Environment was on an input versus output system. But now it's time to go behind the scenes and understand why the primary sector groups were shut out of these final development phases of the government's freshwater policy. And of course, no other than Chris Allen from Federated Farmers will join us after 7:30. Then to close the show, New Zealand pilots are waiting for international aviation to restart. But in the meantime, they're going to use the aviation transport skills to meet a huge urgent need that we know about for heavy agricultural machinery operators throughout the country. This is a great story. The New Zealand Airline Pilots Association Medical and Welfare Director Andy Pender joins us with his bundles of enthusiasm to see pilots fly to the rescue of agricultural contractors this season, and he will join us after 7:40 to close the show. But first up on the show, imagine being able to treat urine patches that can eliminate nitrate leaching beyond the pasture root zone. Denis Collins from Spikey is going to join us after this short break to explain how the farm scale trial has attracted nearly 1.7 million in funding. This is Sarah's Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits.
Children. Chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help your farm,
Grow, milk, drench,
rear, come on in.
because we're out here too.
Delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
Co-host, you look very black on screen. Come for a little cuddle. This is Dolly. Now, Dolly, you can sit here and listen to our next guest. Oh, who I am very much looking forward to. This is fantastic innovation. The objective of this innovation is a targeted treatment of urine patches that can eliminate nitrate leaching beyond the pasture root zone, and a farm trial funded to the tune of $1.7 million from the Sustainable Land Management and Climate Change Research Program, taking place on 50 hectares of a Taranaki demonstration farm, is a very cool pastoral robotic invention known as Spikey. Now, joining us to understand more is Spikey Marketing Manager Denis Collins. Denis, welcome to Serious Country. Firstly, how did this come about? It's such a cool concept.
This came about when some scientists, a farmer and engineer got together and said, the issue with nitrate leaching is cow urine spots. If we could detect those and treat them, we could be onto a winner. That was 7 years ago. So that team over that time have developed a machine, and we call it Spikey because they're spiky discs that travel across the ground to detect urine spots.
My very first question. My very first question to you before we get into that. My apologies, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Matt would like to know, Spikey, the name. How does it get on with rocks then?
It just goes across the top of the ground, so rocks are no problem, and we have got one operating in Canterbury right now. So the spikes get a little bit blunt over time, but it's only to detect urine spots. So it just has to make contact. It doesn't actually go into the ground.
So there was a farmer, a research scientist. Tell us about how they got together and created Spikey.
Well, there was multiple scientists and multiple farmers, and there was one engineer that was issued the challenge, how do we detect urine spots? And once we could do that successfully, then we could move into what we could treat it with. So the technology to detect urine spots has got an IP on it. So I can tell you, it runs across the ground, we can detect them, and we like to do that within 48 hours of grazing. And the reason for that is we then have time for our nitro stop, which is the trade name for what we treat urine with, to work effectively. The sooner the nitro stop gets on, the sooner it can work.
And so to get to this point, the engineer would have had a lot of challenges face him to implement this in a working commercial sense. What were some of those fundamental things that they made sure that would be able to roll out across all farms, not just a trial farm?
So Jeff Bates, our engineer, he spent some time developing the technology and making sure it was simple. And when I say simple, it can be easily scaled up from a manufacturing point of view, and it's also robust in farm working conditions. So he spent, without going into too much detail, spent a fair bit of time developing that in association with our farmers, who are very good at wrecking gear and testing things. So, and then adding in and changing it and evolving it. So we've ended up with a machine that's simple, componentry is easy to replace, it's robust, and it can detect the urine spots. So I should mention that we've worked with Irish scientists and Australian scientists as well as New Zealand scientists to actually test this technology to prove that it works. And we've come through with flying colours, so that was the GIPLA project. The other part of the thing is developing NitroStop, and that's been an evolution over the last 7 years.
So explain to us, how does it work as part of a farm management system in terms of the time post cows moving out of that paddock, and how much area does it cover and the time it would take to do those rounds?
So we've got, the machine is 8 metres wide, and it's got 2 wings that fold down. So and that can cover a fair bit of contour, different type of contour. So that machine, we can travel at 12 kilometres an hour across the paddock, and at that point you start worrying about troughs and strainer posts because they come up rather quickly. We work on, by the time you add in the loading and mixing and adding things, in hill country we're doing about 6 hectares an hour, and on flat country we can get up to 10 hectares an hour. We want to do it within 48 hours. The cost component, which is important, is, and we've just done some modelling on that based on some of our costs that we have, and we have a contractor ready to go in the South Island now, so it's around about $32 per hectare per pass. We found in the Rotorua example that on average we go across the paddocks 8.5 times a year following the cows. So that works out round about in the cost base of $300 a hectare.
Yeah, and of course, overseer effectively being an environmental accounting system, stacking up to the penalties under, say, the freshwater regulations that are coming into play and penalties. Have you been able to do the economics yet around that?
So the economics we've looked at is in the dry matter response. So there's two things that happen. We're looking at reduced leaching and capturing our nitrogen, growing more feed. So the economic side is potentially the feed results we're getting. We're up to 26%. We're looking at around about $1,000 a hectare potentially. The leaching numbers, we've gone from 30% plus reduction in leaching with Spikey. So what we'd like to do is lift it up to farm scale. So we've done lysometers in the ground. We've done paddock trials. The Taranaki project's an opportunity to do the farm systems on the top of the ground and the dry matter response, and then measure the leaching underneath. And that will then inform models like Overseer and give regional councils confidence in this as a legitimate mitigation strategy.
So effectively, Denis, you could see this as recycling nitrogen.
That is exactly how we see it, capturing the nitrogen that goes past the root zone and utilising it to grow feed.
And then how far away will it take to implement this with regional councils, do you think?
We're at the stage now where early adopters are working with it now. Regional councils have to adhere to the Resource Management Act, and they need peer-reviewed science. We have some papers. This project will give us more papers, and it also, we're working with the Overseer modelers to incorporate it in the algorithms, which is a big body of work.
Congratulations, Denis. This must be extremely rewarding. Where to from here with this funding?
So the funding's for the Taranaki demonstration farm. I'm working with the Dairy Trust Taranaki and Ag Research to do this trial and the farm teams down there, which is really great. As part of this funding project, we've also got some lysometers being put into a farm in the Rotorua catchment with some existing lysometers that are already there, so we can utilise that and get some data out of that. We're also doing some modelling in different areas on other farms in terms of dry matter response and some lysometer work to inform a model like Overseer. So there's three tranches of work to this funding proposal that we've received.
I have a comment come in here. I'm not too sure how you want to address this, from Mark Anderson, that other than addressing a broken nitrogen cycle, are the chemicals used in the N inhibitors okay for soil biology?
Yeah, so the two two drivers that we've got in the moment, from a soil biology, they're both actually, one's used widely already and the other one is used in the food processing unit, and they break down. So from the ACVM component and from a environmental protection component, we don't see any issues with what we use now. And anything we do put down into Spikey, we have to go through some rigorous processes to make sure that it's not going to affect the food chain and the environment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Marketing Manager for Spikey, Denis Collins. And of course, I'm just looking at Spikey Gets the Official Nod is the title of the article now on farmersweekly.co.nz, brought to you by Hugh Stringleman. Now, a question that you might be wondering is, what on earth is that noise? Joel, can you hear that? Because you thought of everything, I think, moving to this studio. Could you hear what that sound was?
I could. I was trying to get rid of it, but I think it was on that last connection. I couldn't get rid of that hiss.
No, it was you didn't move the dog food bowl right by my feet, and I could hear Dolly chewing the whole time. So I apologise if you couldn't hear. That's fantastic. And yes, of course, we did have some trouble hearing Denis, but I certainly could make up some of the great things that are happening with Spikey. A fantastic innovation. Thank you so much for getting straight off the mark, sending through your questions. Absolutely love it. And of course, I know you'll have quite a few more of those wool growers around our next interview coming up after the break. We're going to be joined by Chair for Primary Wool Co-Operative, Hamish de Lautour, on speak of a merge potentially between Wools of New Zealand and PwC. This isn't the first time. Is it the last time? Will it be the silver bullet? There's a strong wool action group announced again today from Damien O'Connor. Lots of talk. I would love to hear all the thoughts from our next guest, Hamish de Lautour, after the break. This is Sarah's Country.
The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. Taste pure nature.
Now, two key wool grower organisations are planning a merge of operations to deliver better financial results for farmers. That's the intention. Wools of New Zealand and Primary Wool Co-Operative have committed to work together with formal discussions underway, announced late last week, on how to combine operations in a way that will rejuvenate New Zealand's languishing strong wool sector. Joining us now to discuss this and more is Chair for Primary Wool Co-op, Hamish de Lautour. Evening, sir. How are you?
G'day, Sarah. I'm very well, thank you.
It's great to have you finally on Sarah's Country, and of course a topic very dear to your heart and mine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Probably.
So let's talk about this. I have read in another article around that this isn't the first time that talks have happened, and certainly has been an ongoing thing. Why is it going to be different this time?
Well, without dwelling on the past, the time is right, and so we're doing it. Why not? I'd ask the question, why not? We're both grower groups. We both have the same intentions, and it was just something that's taken a long time to happen, but thank God it has happened now.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the scale of a potential merger, 2,000 passionate sheep farmers under one umbrella, what does that critical mass mean to making a difference when you have such a large scale of supply?
Well, the strategy's clear, and it's not a new strategy, but you need critical mass. You need a volume of growers behind you that trust you and you trust them, so they're watching your back. They're not running around looking for another 10 cents at the farm gate. But you need a bulk of the supply pulling in the same direction to allow that to happen. There's just too much noise going on in the background while you're trying to focus on your market strategy. That just kills these things every time.
How do we get on? I mean, the fundamental history around primary wool co-op was around the infrastructure of manufacturing here at home, and that's really dwindled over the past couple of decades, Hamish. How do we really sort of revamp locally made and ensure that we can capture the value here at home?
Well, it is about capturing value. To be honest, we can capture value at home. It's not easy. That's a real challenge because of the high cost environment that we operate in. Our high regulation cost, high labour cost, environment makes it difficult. But, operating at the high end, we can certainly manufacture onshore. And the thing is, Sarah, if you retain control of your own product further up the value chain and don't lose value every time it changes ownership on the way up the chain, you'd be surprised how competitive we can be producing wool products, even in New Zealand.
What has been some of the learnings that you've had with Primary Wool Co-op's partnership with Carfield Primary Wool and Just Shorn initiatives and that direct-to-market approach previously, and what you could drive home more so with the merger of like?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good question. Success doesn't come overnight, and you learn from your efforts. We've got some big opposition out there in the synthetic world, and we've got to be smart. We've got to have trusted partners. We've got to be able to deliver what the consumer wants. And funnily enough, a large part of that's price. We have to be able to deliver product at a price point, and we can do that.
And Joel, we've certainly just lost Hamish's picture there. Do you think that you might be able to just slightly reconnect him and get him back, or he's not paying much attention?
Trouble with living out in the stick.
What we might do is just ask you to disconnect and reconnect, Hamish, because I want to ask you a few more. Oh no, we're back. Awesome. Because I was just you were saved there. I was about to ask read out something Mark Warren said, so you were lucky. You're back. Now, Hamish, today Damien O'Connor has released the Strong Wool Action Group, which will be chaired by the co-chair of Silverfern Farms, Rob Hewitt, and a group of 12 to take it from a wool working group through a report and out to an action group. What's your thoughts around government driving home strategy rather than industry lead?
So I don't think that that's not a threat at all, and I don't think the government are trying to drive strategy at all. What we're going to do with these two organisations is take the cooperative and the company and work out how we're going to develop the ideal structure which can encompass a whole lot more of the industry. So, we want to be able to incorporate other marketing organisations, other growers. I mean, growers are going to be welcomed to join and come on board. A structure that can encompass what I envisage that the government are doing, from what I've just read, is that, they're going to go hunting for good value propositions and look for commercial entities to drive those initiatives which they're going to help find. So, the value of having one big, powerful grower organisation to pick up on, the government's opportunities that they're going to bring to us is great. I don't see that they're trying to drive the strategy at all.
I'm just going to shorten down Mr. Warren's comment, but is this courting or is this a marriage?
This is, I guess you'd have to say it's an engagement, because, you want to get the marriage right. And but rest assured, when you're dealing with, people with integrity, when we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it.
Mm-mm. Makes a prenup easy when there's not. But in all serious nature, though, we look across the fence and there was grower investment 25 years ago in fine wool, and it took a long-term commitment and it took grower investment to get to that point. How do you believe that farmers can actually contribute to their future when there's nothing in it? If not, it's costing them now.
Look, Sarah, I'm hugely optimistic that we create a structure that growers can invest in. That structure will invest on growers' behalf, or could invest, I envisage investing on growers' behalf in R&D, product development. You've got Ron's doing lots of great things, trying to set up a deconstruction, reconstruction type process to look at new uses for wool. And on their own, growers can't invest in those things. So we need a trusted vehicle for growers to invest. And God help us, you don't get anything for nothing. Growers have to realise that they have to invest. And there's 2,000 growers that have all got skin in the game already, showing leadership, and I think others will follow. It's great.
And I think one of the biggest criticisms of the strong wool industry has been that you haven't brought in outside thinking from different industries. Do you believe that the wool industry is ready to seek advice from different parts that can create a new future rather than talking about carpets?
Look, absolutely, Sarah, and I think that that's appears to be what Damien's doing. But don't underestimate the intelligence and the horsepower of some of the people that have been trying to do this. I mean, we've got some meat industry legends. In New Zealand Entrepreneur of the Year, doesn't get much better than that. He's on the team. So it's not about not knowing what to do. It's just a matter of being able to do it, execute it.
Absolutely. And if it was to be a life legacy, Hamish, in all of the decades that you've been so committed to, if you were to end your days on this earth, what would you like to leave behind? Because I know that, and you're nowhere near that. Take that as a compliment. But I mean, what state would you like to leave the wool sector in your absolute eyes?
Well, Sarah, for a start, this is not about me. This is about, this is just a great event really and the culmination of a lot of hard work from a lot of, famous New Zealanders that have tried and believed what they were doing. I mean, Sir Brian Lahore was one who tried, but, it just wasn't the right time and the right place. My personal vision is to leave the wool industry, well, at least, this is about returns for growers. So wool has to be able to contribute to make a valuable contribution to the sheep industry, because if sheep farming is not profitable and it needs meat and it needs wool, if it's not profitable, well, it's going to be covered in trees. At best, it'll be covered in sheep without wool, and and then we're going to have no shearers, and all that other wealth of industry will be gone. So a thriving industry with fiercely loyal suppliers and fiercely loyal customers returning true value to wool growers. That's my vision.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Chair of Primary Wool Co-op, Hamish de Lautour, and of course pairing up with the new Chair, James Parsons of Wools of New Zealand there, and the title PwC and WONZ to merge in Annette Scott's article on Farmers Weekly on the front page. And of course, getting to your comments, it certainly is an interesting one, isn't it? Is a solution a service or a farmer managed? And is price point the key, or should the industry be pushing the value point? Lots of comments coming in. And it's lovely to see a lovely comment, and I know he said it's not about him, but I mean the De Lautour family, and particularly his father's commitment to the wool industry, should be noted highly as well. Now, while I actually, not sneaking away, because I did have a wee last question. I know we're running over, but who cares? Hamish, before you run away, we're talking about gardening. I know a side note to wool, but refreshing.
This is Sarah's Country.
Yeah, I am. I'm still here.
How was it moving from a beautiful garden to start again fresh in your recent move? And what are some of those things you miss, especially coming into spring?
I miss the rhododendrons, Sarah, because we've moved to an area where the pH doesn't suit rhododendrons. So, we've got some lovely viburnums starting to grow, and we've got some deep, rich black soil, and we can grow parsnips and carrots as long as your arm. So, that's pretty cool.
Quite fun. You get that creativity and challenge all over again because you get to learn what's going to work differently in a new microclimate. So very exciting. And of course...
That's all about me either. I'm not the gardener in this family.
Steal your thunder. I would love to hear from you as the comments on that is that I do have a blank slate at my Canterbury garden here, and I'd love some thoughts from our viewers below. What should I be planting as we're heading into spring? They had a spring feeling for months and months now, but of course it's getting very exciting having my very first garden. Now, coming up after the break, we're running a little bit behind, but Federated Farmers freshwater and environment spokesperson Chris Allen is going to join us to find out why the primary sector groups were shut out of discussions in the recent freshwater rules.
This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
I do feel guilty. Our next guest just told me in the break that he can smell the roast lamb that is awaiting him after this interview. Of course, that will be a short wait in comparison to the long wait around our freshwater regulations and rules. Now, since late May, sector groups have been excluded from the formation of the policy with a 3-day opportunity to respond to the final draft. Now, there was hope that an industry-wide freshwater agreement similar to the health and safety regulations and He Waka Eke Noa, the partnership around climate change, was going to be similar when it came to freshwater. But not so much. Joining us now is Federated Farmers freshwater and environment spokesman Chris Allen, man on the ground who has actively been working on this. Chris, could you give us a little bit of a timeline?
Good evening, Sarah, and thanks for having us on your program tonight.
Thanks.
And a big shout out to my board because I know that they were all watching with intent. Hey, so back in 2018, 19, must have been last year, there was the Ministry for the Environment. They were actually consulting with the Freshwater Leaders Group. There's 4 particular groups that the government had set up. And they were also talking to the primary sector groups. And through that, Federated Farmers was asked to organise a meeting. So that's what actually happened. I was out of the country at the time. And so when you have these confidential conversations, yes, they are confidential and they stay. What happens behind closed doors stays there, and the information is not shared. So other industry groups were all invited around the table, and so that the officials were seeking feedback on some of the stuff that they were also talking to their other advisory groups to see how practical it was, where was industry going, and what could we do as well. And we were having really good, solid discussions. For some reason, some information from some of the participants, wasn't Federated Farmers, absolutely categorically deny that, got shared. It didn't go very far or wide. And somehow that got back to the Minister. So Minister Parker then chopped it all on the head, and Minister O'Connor, and pretty much we were shut out of the process. The whole primary sector was shut out of that process. It wasn't particularly helpful, and it actually brought into challenged the reputation of some of our really highly qualified staff, and that is something I really take quite personally, that challenge. So it's been really hard to have any engagement with the ministry officials. So we can only do it through email. There's no face-to-face conversation unless it's been signed off by the ministers, as I'm told. So, it's really unhelpful keeping on going back to that, but that's the way it unfolded.
It's not surprising behaviour from Minister David Parker, I do have to say, but in terms of our Minister of Agriculture completely shutting the door on consultation with his own sector, was that surprising to you?
Oh, yeah, no, it was. Look, one thing that did give us a little bit of solace, we officially got the information from the Official Information Act of what advice his ministry had been giving the government, and it was pretty solid for what I saw. So that gave us a little wee bit of comfort. However, we've got a lot of rules and regulations and a policy package out there at the moment, and it's got a lot of things that aren't going to work particularly well. And if you engage with those practitioners who are going to be doing the work on the ground, you're going to save a lot of embarrassment. Look, last thing we want is on Monday morning, Prime Minister Ardern sits up at a cabinet meeting and says, "Okay, Minister Parker and O'Connor, what are we going to change in the freshwater documents today?" Because they've started that process. And Minister O'Connor's also said, we've got quite a few changes to do. A lot of those things could have been avoided. That is the frustrating piece.
And we do have to remind our listeners and viewers, this is the highest turnout of farmer submissions in history, 17,000 submissions. No one sat around with sitting on their hands now, did they, Chris? But one thing I do have to ask is there was groups that were implementing years ago on farm environment plans to get ahead of the game, the carrot rather than the stick approach. And there's been such a mishmash across totally different industry good organisations and regional councils on what is best practice, and now all of a sudden we have this overarching stick.
Yeah, and look, 2 years ago we were actively involved in a process called the Good Farming Practice Action Plan for Water Quality, and that was using the 21 principles of good farming practice, so that they've been agreed across industry. And a good management practice doesn't sit still in time. It changes as technologies and the evidence, science says, if you can do this, you can actually make a positive change. And I'll use the example of, we use irrigation. Many years ago, we started with water diking irrigation, then we went to rotor-rain irrigation, then we got to center pivots, and now there's all sorts of irrigation. All that there is just a progression down that continuum. And in a few years' time, it'll be changed again. So good management practices, we thought, was a really good way. Go to the at-risk catchments where there's a problem, and you start picking up on these principles. Fonterra, they've got their farm plans. We've got Beef and Lamb, they've got some. Dairy NZ have got some. Irrigation New Zealand have got some. How you can get the best out of it is bring industry together, be efficient with the use of time, energy, money. And farmers, right at this time, are going to be the backbone of the economy again. And we want to build on that, not actually get in the way of them.
Chris, how much reputational damage does this do for Federated Farmers going forward into collaborative talks on other issues?
Look, there's a whole suite of things that Federated Farmers engages with government on. Whether you're talking firearms, whether you're talking high country, 10-year review, there's a whole suite of things. And a lot of that stuff's gone on, and we've had really good relationships with it. I've been part of the Biodiversity Collaborative Group. That was for like 3 years of solid work, really good engagement with ministers, both Department of Conservation and Minister Mahuta as well. So really respectful, good dialogue, and they listened to a lot of what we were saying. When it came to freshwater, it was like, hey, you guys stand over there, we've got this. And that is, and the policy team we've got is the biggest that's outside government. And these guys get it. And we're a bottom-up organisation. We're farmers, we've got our provincial execs as well, and they feed into that policy team. And you've got regional level and you've got national level. So it's quite an unusual beast, but it's really effective. And if you're trying to give government or someone some advice on something, come and talk to Federated Farmers, because we've got it covered, and it actually means that what's going on at ground level can actually be done.
Thank you so much. Now, just on this, Neil Wallace has been following this very, very closely, and comment from Minister Damien O'Connor and Minister David Parker were all declined at their request as well. So the door shut on rural media just as much, if that says enough. Chris, on a positive note, before you get away to that hopefully still warm roast lamb, now tell us, you're in Canterbury, you can advise me on what grows well here. What do you think I should grow?
Look, if you've got a nice section, I'd put a silk tree. Coming up our back pathway, we've got this beautiful silk tree, and it's just stunning. It does take a wee while for it to come out, just the part of the climate we're at, but it just lasts, and it's just stunningly beautiful. So I love it, especially when it's flowering.
Awesome. I'll definitely
Can't go wrong there, so.
I'll definitely look that up when I head along to the nursery next. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Federated Farmers, Freshwater and Environment Spokesman Chris Allen joining us there. And as I said, Neil Wallace has been following that very closely, doing some great investigative work on what is happening as it is evolving. It certainly is changing. Last week we saw Damien O'Connor pivot slightly in regards to amending some of those rules. How far will they go? I mean, we are counting down to an election as well. Now, coming up to close on Sarah's Country, this is a great heartwarming story. From Boeing to balers, the airline industry is reaching out a friendly hand to our agricultural contractors. I'm very much looking forward to speaking to Andy Pender after the break.
This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Now, there's over several hundred pilots that are either on furlough or who have been made redundant because of COVID-19 and the effect it's had on international aviation that are seeking work in potentially the agricultural economy. Joining us now is the New Zealand Airline Pilots Association Medical and Welfare Director, Andy Pender. Welcome to Sarah's Country, Andy.
Nice to be here, Sarah. Thanks for giving you and your audience some of your time. Great to be here.
Thank you for giving your particular members the opportunity to pair up and redeploy within our industry. It's certainly heartwarming. Can you tell us about how those initial conversations happened?
Classic Kiwi story, really. One of our good people at the Airline Pilots Association just happened to be talking to a fantastic member of MPI's regional workforce liaison team. And that gentleman based in Hamilton was asking one of our people, how are pilots getting on right now? And, the simple answer was there's around 500 looking at facing redundancy, or a much smaller number looking at furlough, a wee time away from airlines like in New Zealand. And from that sentence came the, well, have I got a deal for you? We got into a whole heap of Zoom conversations, which are still ongoing, and we were put in touch with the wonderful people at Rural Contractors NZ, Roger Parton and his fantastic members. It's all been a blur because it's been so busy, but essentially Roger went out to his members. We got an indication of around, I think it was north of 200 opportunities in the rural sector, everything from picking kumara through to harvester work that needed to start ASAP. We understand those members of Rogers are hurting and are facing a real situation with these borders closed. And equally on the other side of the fence, our Airline Pilots Association members are facing a storm of much different situation, not too much work, none. So look, it was a fantastic introduction, and from there we've simply been joining the dots, throwing our people that are super keen for work, and look, more so coming from our great country, agricultural work, vast majority of our people are all over it.
Could you just give us a bit of a feeling of what it is like for these airline pilots having to reconsider an entire new industry? I actually listened to a talkback interview with an airline pilot, and I have to say there's a lot of our ego attached to who we are as our role and our job in society, to then have to go and do something else which hasn't been deemed as that, but really in terms of skill set is really up there in comparison. How do you support them in your role as a medical and welfare director to get their head around that, and especially their families?
How long have you got?
I'm just so interested in that. Yeah.
Look, I could really go down a very long conversation there, Sarah. I'd say, quick plug for our fantastic aviation peer assistance team, www.pan.org.nz. Say no more. When our folks in the aviation industry are facing very unique pressures the aviation industry throws at them, we've got a fantastic dedicated team that are behind them, much like Farmstrong, much like Mike King's Trust, that do some fantastic work for aviation professionals out there. What's it like for a airline pilot to 1 minute go and jump in the airplane, the next minute realise their job's redundant? Well, I can speak from very personal experience. April 3, I was told that I'm no longer a 737 captain. You talk about identity around jobs, you talk about job being within oneself. Well, personally, as a pilot, it doesn't come much stronger feeling than that. A lot of our people have only ever known aviation, me included. I can't remember not wanting to fly. My dad took me up for a helicopter flight when I was 4 years old, apparently over Christchurch with Garden City Helicopters, and ever since then I had a terrible addiction called aviation. First flight when I was 15. I'm going to give you some scary maths now that could work it out. The greys are here, but look, that was about, give or take, 20 years ago. So I'm looking at a whole new frontier now after 20 years of only ever wanting to be a pilot. Now what? And not only that, but I've got a mortgage, I've got a family, I've got people relying on me. So the weight is incredibly strong. Luckily for me, personally, I just hit the ground running and upped tools as best I could and went building labouring. Now, I thought I'd struck a lucky break, but I'll tell you what, of the other stories I'm hearing out there from our members at the Airline Pilots Association, 99% have grabbed whatever they can. There's folks picking onions out in the Hawke's Bay. There's others driving trucks for Fonterra. They're upping sticks and doing what they can, because us as aviation professionals, we know one thing: we're used to challenges. We've just got to get into it. So as you can imagine, when the Rural Contractors NZ, the opportunities came out of MPI, it was an absolute gift, and one that I know our members will jump all over given the chance.
Oh, and the cockpits are quite similar.
I've jumped into Dad's tractor, and look, it is missing a couple of screens, Sarah. But look, I like to call it my land-based 737. It's as close as I'm getting to something as fancy as that at the moment.
Absolutely. And talking with Rural Contractors Association, what has been, I know that you do have a connection to the land, but amazed you at how far the industry's come, and particularly with technology?
GPS and headers and tractors, and just hit that button and off down the run you go. I mean, I knew our friends in the Crescos and Fletcher's top dressing had that capability, but the amazing gear, having, crawled over every piece of machinery at the Canterbury AMP show since I was 5 years old, thinking about those big fat case machines, to now talking about with Roger, he's saying, look, we'll give your people a go, but realise what we've got in these larger pieces of machinery. He was holding it back, but he said as close as you can get to the space shuttle on land, and I can see why. They're some magnificent machines. It's come a long, long way, and luckily, look, aviation's done the same thing. It's advanced now to the point where they're doing automated takeoffs and landings. Luckily, still with human beings up the front, and I won't talk about what's around the next century because hopefully they'll still need pilots. But look, I've seen real similarities between agriculture and aviation, and that's why I'm plugging, let us former aviation professionals roll our sleeves up and prove ourselves on the land with you. If we're given the honour of jumping on your farm or your machinery, let us prove our worth, because I'll back our people at the Airline Pilots Association every day. They'll make you glad that you gave us the shot.
And to close, my biggest concern is the health and safety and well-being of our contractors and our skilled labour that currently are still either here in New Zealand or are Kiwis that have been involved driving machinery for a long time. Integrating a lot of unskilled Kiwi labour over a blanket migrant approval visa, which I understand Rural Contractors is seeking from immigration. Naturally, the appreciation for health and safety from pilots would be to the nth degree and absolutely suitable for this particular role, not only the technology, understanding.
Too right. I lost count at how many computer-based training modules, and I think I can almost hear the laughter from my former Virgin Australia colleagues here. We were absolutely inundated with study around health and safety, Sarah. One of the last ones, would you believe it, was an ironic piece on falls from heights. So, hey, a real threat, but, we covered everything. And a lot of our people, a good portion of them, have gone into the health and safety field. A colleague and I spoke at WorkSafe's conference last year around our experience from the aviation industry, experience with safety management systems and health and safety. So, very au fait with today's requirements. We have good ties up with WorkSafe, and look, when it comes to a farm induction or worksite induction, we'll be up there first place, ready to go, listening up for the threats out there.
So, what do I say and where do these to the likes of the hawkers from Riversdale that run Waipunamu Contracting that have taken a barbecue and beers and sat outside the university in Dunedin to find staff? How do they get their hands on some valuable pilots?
Look, drop us a line, ring 0800 NZ Alpa 09 255 1500, ask for me. I'm busy on the building site putting skirting board up and recladding a shopping mall in Christchurch at the moment, but I'm doing my wheels, tracks, rollers next Friday just to try and keep up with the other members that have done their class 2s already, and class 4s, 5s, they're leaving me in the dust. But look, in all seriousness, www.nzalpa.org.nz, 0800 NZ Alpa, ask for Andy Pender to be put through to me or any of the wonderful medical and welfare team, and any offers or even a conversation about how we can help on your farm and your agricultural company. A heap of our people come from rural backgrounds. We know a way around farming communities and machinery. Give us a crack. We'd be on it.
What a way to end. Thank you so much. There's Andy Pender, the Medical and Welfare Director for the New Zealand Airline Pilots Association, former Virgin Australian captain, and now, as he said, working on a building site and working to support his former colleagues who have been affected by COVID-19 to redeploy into the highly skilled role that is in shortage, which is our agricultural contractors. I mean, I think this is one of my favourite interviews to date, just because it is coming with such open hearts and is bridging a problem from both halves. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you actively with us in the comments tonight, and of course to thank you so much to our wonderful guests and to my wonderful producer Joel for setting up this studio in my home. Yes, Anthony, we're not in the studio anymore, just temporarily as we move into our new studio in Taitapu. And of course you can get in touch, Sarah at periummedia.com. All of the stories have been brought to you in alliance with the great team at Farmers Weekly, of course farmersweekly.co.nz, and out in your rural mailboxes today and tomorrow. So of course, if you'd like to suggest any stories and any guests, please do get in touch, and you can even drop in to have a chat to me on social media. Any podcast on demand that you'd like to catch up with or share these individual interviews, make sure you go to Sarah's Country on podcast as well as on YouTube. We'll be back again tomorrow night. Really looking forward to it. And I have got a great lineup again brought to you from my home to yours. Good night and go well.
This is Sarah's Country.